Hey, it's Eric.
And Lex.
And you're listening to the Cutting Room Floor podcast.
It's a weekly conversation devoted to diving deeper into the messages that were preached right here in our church on Sunday morning.
In an authentic space to Selah as we allow the Word of God to work into our everyday lives.
So hey, thank you so much for taking the time to tune in. Why don't you make sure to subscribe so that you don't miss a thing about what's happening on the Cutting Room Floor podcast.
So let's lean in and listen to today's conversation. Hey, welcome back to the Cutting Room Floor podcast. So glad that you're joining us today. We are diving into another conversation. Today we're talking all things marriage, talking about being a husband, talking about being a wife. Yesterday in church, we came around a simple thought. 3 things your husband wants you to know, and 3 things your wife wants you to know. Lex and I tag team preach. She started it, I finished it, and we had a whole lot of fun. And listen, there was a lot left on the cutting room floor. And so today we're going to dive into that, dig a little deeper. I pray it encourages and helps you really in any of your relationships, but in particular in your marriages. So let's dive in. My love, my wife.
The wife of your youth.
The wife of my youth. How you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you? It's a fun Sunday.
It was. We actually had a lot of fun with it.
We had a lot of fun with it.
We said that we don't know if we'll ever do it again.
I don't know if we will,
because
even though
I don't
it's fun.
know if we will do it again.
Yeah.
But it was fun.
Yeah.
And I thought, I don't know. I thought it was good. I think it was very practical. Everything.
Very practical.
And
very
really,
helpful.
in relationships, seems to be practical.
Yeah.
Like I think we've learned that there's really not a big trick. It's like exercise and diet, I feel like. Like everyone's looking for the trick to lose 20 pounds.
Everyone's trying to get Ozempic, when really if you would just
build muscle, but really like at the end of the day, it's actually practical changes that like make the difference. That's true with marriage. We had fun. What a wife wants you to know.
Yeah,
like what
3
your
things.
wife wants you to know, husband. And wife, here's some things your husband wants you to know. So we're not going to dig into all of them. Quickly recap, what were your 3?
Okay, your wife wants you to know that she actually loves it when you lead. Your wife wants you to know that she needs security, but not in the way you think.
Yeah.
And your wife wants you to know that she wants to be your lover, not your mother.
Ooh, that's a good one.
What about you? What were your 3 points?
I like that one. However, we joked yesterday, sometimes it is nice when you like mother a little bit.
Honestly, like
when I'm not feeling well.
I would like both.
I'm kind of like, you could make me chicken noodle
we
soup.
still want to serve and take care of you. We're looking more so to be your lover, not your mother.
You are my lover.
Yes.
My love.
My love.
My 3, what your husband wants you to know.
Yeah.
Was, I'm blanking on all of them.
It was.
Help me out.
Was words of encouragement.
Okay, here we go. Your husband wants you to know he longs for your words of encouragement.
Yeah.
He likes to have fun with you, and he loves your love for God.
Yep.
You see what I did there with the L's? Longs, likes, loves.
That's good stuff,
Nobody
babe.
probably noticed that.
He's preaching. Nobody noticed that.
That was intentional.
But you noticed it.
I did.
Yeah.
But hey, there's probably so much more. And I'm curious, maybe we start with this. What are some like funny things that come to your mind when you think about what you wish what wives wish their husbands knew?
Okay. I'm so glad we're having this conversation because I've been waiting till we could really have a long form where I could share just some of the things I wish you knew.
It's an open dialogue in our marriage today. You're like, I share those all the time. Like,
no, we already talked about that.
We don't need to have a podcast
We don't need to have a podcast for that.
That's called 6 a.m. in our house most days.
A few quick things, let's go back and forth, that your spouse wants you to know. I think all the wives want the husbands to know that when we say we're fine, we absolutely do not mean that we're fine. You should, we're not fine. Yeah,
I think we've had
Let that be known.
I think we've had lots of conversations where I'm like, hey, what's bothering you?
Nothing.
And you go, nothing, I'm fine. And I'm like, no, like evidently something is bothering you. You're like, I'm fine, stop asking about it. Like, I'm fine, let's just watch a show. And I'm like, no, like, what's going on?
Yeah.
And then it's like 3 hours later.
Well, actually.
You're like, when you said that to me, it actually hurt me. And I'm kind of like, that's what I asked 3 hours ago. Why do we have to sit in silence for 3 hours? That's a good one. That one frustrates the husbands, I think.
I get it, yeah.
Okay, your husband wants you to know that your husband, I don't know, I feel like this is so dangerous. Like all these are like.
No, it's free. We're free. Just say it. Yeah, we should feel scared.
Your husband wants you to know he could use a night with the boys.
Oh, that's good. Yeah. I like that.
He would like that.
He would like that.
Yep.
Your wife wants you to know that helping with the household chores and helping with your kids and like making food and dinner is the biggest turn on you could ever give her.
Wow.
Yep.
Your husband wants you to know he likes it when you tell him anything's a turn on.
All right. Your wife wants their husband to know that. Let me think. If you have one, you can jump in.
I think your husband wants you, wife, to know that I just had it just ran from me.
We're not sharp this morning.
We're not sharp
this morning.
Your husband wants you to know that he can't think of his freaking answer to this.
Okay, your wife wants her husband to know that she really needs quality time with you.
Yeah.
Like time together.
Yep. Your husband wants you to know it's not that he doesn't feel emotions, it's that he doesn't know how to communicate them.
That's good. That's true.
It's foreign to him.
He still feels them. He just doesn't know how to talk about them.
Yep.
Okay, your wife wants your husband to know it would really help if you picked up your socks and put your toothbrush away.
Your husband wants you to know.
This is getting personal.
Your husband wants you to know he needs clarity.
Yeah,
Like, tell him what you want.
Yeah. What do you want?
What do you want?
What do you want? This is great. Your wife wants her husband to know that if he ever goes through a drive-through and doesn't get her something as well in the drive-through, there will be an argument.
Oh, we've had that.
Always get something.
We've had that.
Always get something for her.
Swing through like Chick-fil-A, just like, you didn't at least get me fries?
You didn't
like,
even give me like a diet lemonade.
were you
like,
not
you know I
thinking
like
of me?
that.
Like, why were you not thinking of me?
You're like, no, I wasn't thinking
You must
of
hate
you.
me. Oh, I got one.
Okay.
Your husband wants you to know, on the heels of that one, your
Yeah.
husband wants you to know,
Here we go.
he actually does more for you and the family than you notice.
I think that's probably true.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's probably true. Your wife wants the husbands to know that anytime you think, should I grab diapers and wipes, just grab them.
Yeah.
Like, just like, that's always on our minds.
Yep. Your husband wants you to know when he's in the bathroom for 45 minutes, it's because he just wants a break from the kids.
Your wife wants your husband to know there's no scientific way, physical possible way that it takes 45 minutes to be in the bathroom.
Your husband wants you to know his brain works differently than yours. Like, your brain interconnects everything in life all at once. It's like a bowl of spaghetti. Like, it's like you can be thinking about the kids, and then all of a sudden about work, and then about a childhood memory, and then about a friend you need to reach out to, and then about a calendar thing coming up. But when your husband's thinking about something, he's not thinking about anything else. He's just kind of thinking about that thing. And so, like, when you're talking together about your schedule for the week, you can't also ask him about the grocery list. Like, he's not thinking, that's like too complicated.
But we're like, yes, we can. Just change.
We're in one box at a time. Like, be patient
great.
with us.
Your wife wants your husband to know that she actually wants to have sex with you, but not when it's like 10 p.m. at night. You've already turned the lights off and you're ready to go to bed. And it's just like, hey, are you awake? It's like, no, you had 3 hours. Like, she actually does want to.
Taken advantage of the time you had.
Take advantage of the
You're
time
like,
we had.
but there was a game on. I was watching a game.
Your wife wants to know that she's more important to you than a game.
She is, but the game was so interesting.
I know, it's so interesting. This is not pointed, actually. These are all things we've already talked about.
Well, it's kind of pointed. Your husband wants you to know that... Your husband wants you to know in his brain, there's also a box that's called the nothing box where it's physically possible for him to sit there and be thinking of nothing. And so when you're on a long drive and it's quiet for a while and you say to your husband, what are you thinking about? And he says nothing. He's not lying. There was literally a span of a few minutes where there was just absolutely nothing going on in his brain. And it's a great place to be. It's one of my favorite boxes to live in. Just the nothing brain.
Oh,
what
that's
else?
great.
Anything else? These are hot takes.
Hot takes. No, I think I'm good.
Nailed it.
What about you? Any more? Rolling off?
No, I'm sure they'll come as we go. Maybe we just throw them in.
I love it. If they just come to you, just let it happen.
Yeah, let it happen.
Okay.
For the life, God. For the passion. It's how He made you. Just let it happen. Always a lyric in my head.
Always a lyric.
In my nothing box.
In
it's
your
like,
nothing
what does
box?
that even mean? Like, anyway.
Okay, well, I know a wife or a woman has just an everything box.
Oh, I got
like,
one.
when am I sitting here? I'm just thinking of everything
I
all
got
at
one.
once.
I got a really important one.
Okay.
Your husband wants you to know that he really wants a pickup truck, but he's willing to get a minivan.
And you know what, babe? I hear that. And your wife, your particular wife, wants you to know that I appreciate that sacrifice and I love you.
Wow, thank you so much.
You're
that
welcome.
just feels like the reward I was looking for.
Yeah, the reward.
Thank
We'll
you.
get your truck one day.
Yeah.
Just not today, probably.
Yeah. That's great.
But I love you.
I love you too.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about this. So those are all real. Actually, probably a lot of those are real. but also practical. Well, yesterday we talked about this idea that wisdom builds the house.
Yes.
And the Proverbs is full of little bits, honestly, of things we just mentioned to each other, like little bits of wisdom around how we use our words, how we take care of each other, how we serve each other. Talk to me a little bit about how you process that. Like, as you're talking about wisdom building your house, how do you build marriages through practical wisdom, especially when maybe it's not easy?
Yeah, I think whenever you read through Proverbs, you'll be shocked by how much it talks about marriage, and about husbands and about wives, and like I think that it actually, if we let it, it will help us in our marriages. If we let it and like apply it, I think it will change us.
Yeah.
You know, we didn't bring it up. I made a joke about it first service. There's a lot of Proverbs about a nagging wife.
Yeah.
And I didn't bring those up, and you didn't bring those up. But I think that's something where, like, if we were to actually take those Proverbs, I think there's one that's like a nagging wife is like a faucet that never stops dripping. And it's like, okay, let's see here. Let me reflect on my own wife to you.
Yeah.
Am I nagging? Sometimes I think all wives can be nagging. I think sometimes husbands can be nagging too. I don't think it's just a wife. But like, if I were to take that overall proverb theme about being a wife, Proverbs 31 says that like, my wife does good to me for all the days of my life. I'm like, okay, I can either travel down the path of life and be a wife that does good to my husband, or I can travel down the path of foolishness and be a wife that's always nagging.
Right.
Like, I don't want to be a faucet dripping in your life every day that you can never fix. I want to be a wife that does good to you. So I actually think that there's tons in the Proverbs that can help us to build a life and to build a marriage and a family and wisdom. I even think about how much Proverbs talks about not going down the road of the promiscuous woman, about staying with the wife of your youth, about the grass isn't greener anywhere else. It's green where you water it. And if I'm going to travel down the path of life, I'm going to choose my wife over and over and over again. But anytime I even think about traveling down a path of foolishness, it's going to end in death for me. Not physical death. It's going to end in death in my marriage, death in my family. So I think that's like, okay, let's take that into consideration as we use wisdom to build our house, to build our marriage.
Yeah, I think that's great. And I think there's so much to that. Like, I think we mentioned it earlier, but I think there's something to sit here for a second on, of often, like, marriage really isn't that complicated.
It's not, no.
And actually, most human relationships, we're complex individuals, but practicing relationship is actually basic things that are just hard to do time and time again. Rather than one big secret to a happy marriage, it's actually a million little decisions you decide on every day, like over and over and over. And I think this is the principles of wisdom. Things like we've talked about, things of honoring and respecting one another, serving one another, showing up for each other. But I think here's the key, is that sometimes in marriage, we get stuck focused on your issues.
Right.
Like, I get stuck focused on your issues, you get stuck focused on mine. And I think one of the keys in developing a healthy marriage, and maybe in seasons of our life, has been having to look internally to go, no, like, my responsibility and the only thing I can really change is myself. And so rather than nagging your potential problems, it's learning to look inwardly and to check yourself, like to check your own heart, your own behavior.
Totally.
You know, if what you're bringing or not bringing to the marriage. And I think that's where the rubber meets the road. I think sometimes, marriage is this topic that I think we all are interested in learning from, because we all want healthy marriages. And as pastors, the most, really the majority of conversations we have with individuals in the church often comes back to some level of an issue in marriage, like in your relationship with your spouse. But my hope is that we lean into wisdom and talk about that, practice that, not just the Proverbs, but all of Scripture. That it will help us to look into ourselves, to figure out where we need to change, grow, humble ourselves, ask for forgiveness, mature, take the seat of Jesus to serve. And I think we can do that. It will help us to build houses that last, right?
Yeah. Totally. Yeah. Okay, I have a question for you. Because yesterday we shared these 3 things, 3 things your wife wants you to know, 3 things your husband wants you to know. And I think they were all tempered, right? Because we were talking to a large crowd. But if you could share maybe one thing that your husband really wants you to know, but maybe he'll never share. Or never ask, or maybe feels too uncomfortable to ask, but really wants you to know. And maybe I can take a turn to think that too. Of like something a little bit, maybe like we wouldn't feel comfortable sharing on a Sunday, but we can talk about it in this context. Is there anything that comes to your mind?
Well, no, I think there's a number of things. I think there's so many routes for this, but I think the one that came to my mind right away is that your husband is more insecure than he leads on. I think I talked about it a little bit around words of encouragement, but maybe didn't go to this depth. But I think a lot of men in our world today, they often either process insecurity through pride, through open, kind of bold arrogance, or a tough exterior, or the opposite. They process their insecurity through silence, through not opening up, shelling up, and protecting themselves. But I think for a lot of men that haven't maybe processed their own emotional health, a lot of men live with insecurity, wondering if they're good enough, if they've done enough, if their life is something worthy of being proud of. Many men and any women but live deeply with wounds from their childhood, from their homes, from their fathers. And so they walk into marriages, and even a lot of reasons marriages and relationships start is because you realize this woman that I'm attracted to, like, she actually meets me in some of those spaces of my life where I'm insecure, and she gives me a sense of purpose and confidence and value and being enough, and her attention, her gaze, her desire of me. Like all of those kinds of things, they actually like satisfy parts of me that have not been satisfied before. And I think there's something deeply holy to that. I think that's a part of why God wired us to get married. And while nobody can complete you, I think God alone completes you. There is this way that I think a wife can complement areas of your life that maybe are weak. But I still think in marriages, a lot of men live insecure. A lot of men play, and it kind of seems like maybe this is more of a feminine issue, but a lot of men that I know and talk to play the comparison games between where they are as a leader, as a man, in their finance, in their home, in their health, in their image, comparing that to other men. I think a lot of men live insecure with their own weaknesses, feeling ashamed of maybe behaviors or tendencies or things they wrestle with, like anger. Some men struggle with alcohol, with pornography, with promiscuity, like you name the subject. And I think all of those things live as baggage in the hearts of men that I think we can struggle then to show or reveal that to our wives at any level, because we don't ever want to display a level of weakness, especially the person we're called to protect and provide and care for. And so I think there's something to that for a wife to know that as much as like it seems like your husband's fine, and it seems like he doesn't need maybe your affirmation, your encouragement, your support, you digging in. I think when you kind of recognize that, like there's and again, I'm not a psychologist, but I've talked with my counselor about this a little bit. There's like the little boy that lives inside every man, the little boy that's still longing for his father's approval, the little boy that's still longing to fit in, the little boy that still has dreams and aches to do something with meaning and significance in his life. And I think a lot of men wrestle with all those things. Feeling insignificant, feeling like what they're doing is something no one's proud of, recognizes, affirms. And while all of that ultimately needs to come from God, that my wife can never fully satisfy me in any of those deep places of my soul at the level to which I am created to be satisfied, I do think our wives play a significant role in helping us there.
I love that.
And whether that's through your words of encouragement, whether that's through just open conversation, and I think just you can add whatever you think for the other side, but I think you've done a wonderful job with that in my life. I think I've only probably become more aware of some of those things within me over the past 5 years, but being able to bring some of that to you and find that, you're not the one who perfects me. Jesus perfects me. But you are someone in my life who can affirm me, encourage me, recognize those tendencies in my soul and draw me out of them, speak life into me. And so I think we can, there's tons of things your husband wants you to know that are jokes or like that are lighthearted. But I think if, again, I don't speak for every husband in the world, but I think a lot of husbands, I think if they were to look real deep inside, be real honest with themselves, I think a lot of us would relate with some level of feelings around that subject.
I love that. I think that's really good. And I was going to ask what wives can do to help with that, but I feel like you answered that a little bit. So I think that's wonderful and insightful. And I think for every wife to hear, and whether that's happening in a deep space or whether that's happening at the surface level, I think that lives there for every man in a different way, every man in a different way. And
I've heard others who are more marriage experts talk about this, but this idea that like every man, as cheesy as this is going to sound, like I even resist it because it's so cheesy to me, but every man wants to be the childhood superhero they imagine them being. Like every man wants to feel like that. Every man wants to step into their world, the world that God's put them in, their homes, their families, their careers, and to feel that sense of like, man, I'm really like doing something of significance. And I think a lot of men wrestle because it's really hard to ever see yourself that way.
Totally.
But I think there's something about the way the words a wife can speak. I mean, I mentioned it to church yesterday, but 100 people could tell me, Eric, you're not good enough, not doing enough, whatever. But when you speak words of life to me, it helps that like inner superhero to come out and to feel confident and to feel like I can lead and accomplish what you've called me to do. And then the opposite is true there as well. Like when you, and I mean you, but really any wife, like, and this happens in real life, when you recognize the places I'm weak and you share your frustrations, disappointments, some of it's real, we need to have conversations, but some of it may be out of jest or out of anger. Those kinds of words only reaffirm the narrative I already tell myself.
I can think of a few moments in our marriage.
I already critique myself enough. So one of the husbands told me that this week. I already critique myself enough. Like I'm already so aware of the places I'm not the superhero I really long to be. And so in conversations, when words are spoken that reaffirm that, there's a significant damage, not done necessarily to the marriage relationship, but damage that's done to my own soul that further pushes me down from leading the way the wife maybe desires your husband to lead, or rising to be confident or full of joy. Like those are all interconnected. Yeah. There's a lot there.
There's a lot there,
but I think that's very much worth wives like maybe having some insight into maybe in ways they hadn't noticed before.
No, I think that's really important, because I think as wives we can tend to be more emotional. We can tend to, I think, be quicker to resentment sometimes in the dynamic of relationships. I think we just carry different things, different responsibilities. And so I think it's really important to know, because I think, like you said, words can completely destroy or they can build up. Yeah. And having the ability, wisdom teaches me, and I've been horrible with this and I've been great with this, and I think I'm probably on a journey with this. Wisdom teaches me to hold back my words that aren't going to build. Yeah. Not to not be honest, but to hold them back in moments where that's gonna bring damage. We're in the middle of a fight, we're in the heat of an argument, and I want to say something so bad, but it's actually an arrow. It's actually just a dagger, and it's only gonna bring harm to you, the person that I love. So wisdom teaches me, hey, don't say that. Maybe save that.
Save it for the next day.
5
Give
days
it 24
later,
hours. Yeah.
Right? When the emotions have died down, and you can phrase it in a way where it's actually, hey, this made me feel this way, rather than a dagger. So I think that's really true. But you have to be aware that, hey, my husband actually is complex and is feeling a lot of things, and I can either add to that or I can help lift him out of that.
100%.
That's great.
What about you? What's something you would say? Not gonna be that deep, but
no, I've been thinking. I'm kind of wondering what I want to say. I think maybe what I want to say is that wives want, I think one of the most important things that a wife is looking for from her husband is trust. Right. And I think that we live in a culture where affairs are celebrated. I'm not talking about in the church. I'm talking about our world.
Yeah, for sure.
Affairs are celebrated.
Movies, TV shows.
Movies and TV shows. Everybody's having an affair.
People in the families that we live in.
People talk about work wives and like boundaries are just not a thing in our world and in our culture. It's like, well, every marriage is going to end in divorce, and every marriage will go through an affair. And like, of course, I'm not going to be faithful to you the rest of my life forever. And I think in a Christian marriage, your wife is looking more than anything for trust. And I think I would tell the husbands, like, there's probably a little bit of unshared fear in her heart by just living in the world that we live in, with naked women everywhere on billboards and pornography at the touch of a finger. Your wife probably lives with a small amount of fear of like, hey, can I trust my husband? And I think that if you want to build a deep relationship, if you want an intimacy life that is thriving, the biggest thing as a husband that you can focus on is living a life that your wife can trust you. So I think that means, and I think you fought for this, I think that our story, I think actually we do wonderful in this, but I think that, like, I'm just thinking about the wives. I think that that's really important. I think it is too. And I think that means being honest when you make a mistake, or even the small things, because to me, if you tell me something that's on your mind, that's on your conscience, that's small, that helps me to know that if he's honest with me in something small, that he's not hiding things from me. There's nothing hidden here. And I think so many men are like, gosh, I wish my wife would be more interested in sex. But I'm like, well, how's your trust?
Yeah.
Are things hidden in your life? Is there a pattern of sexual addiction? Like, I just think it's like, I think that women need to feel safe.
Yep.
And they need to feel trust.
Yep.
And if there's a pattern of mistrust within your marriage, then there's never going to be the thriving connectedness of intimacy that both of you are longing for.
Yep.
So I think bringing security to her that, hey, I'm yours. Like, my eyes are yours, my heart is yours, and I'll do whatever it takes to like hold to that fight. Is I think what every wife longs for. I think what you've been a great example to, and a lot of men in our church. And but I think that's hard. Like, it's like, that's a huge commitment. I don't think women understand how big of an ask that is. To your husband. Because we're just built differently.
No, I think that's great, Lovey. I think that's something we've had to go through in our first decade of marriage, was really coming to realize how valuable that like currency of trust is. And that trust is everything in your marriage. And when you have it, you can feel connected, close, and life's great. But if you don't have it, or if it's in question, then everything about marriage is hard. Like, everything about it is going to the grocery store together is hard if you don't have trust for one another. And I think in particular for the wife to have trust in their husband, and especially in this area of honesty and of sexual health, of purity.
Or sexuality, purity.
And I think there's layers to that. There's trust with our finances. There's trust with the person I see in the home. It's the same person at work.
I think there's trust with not sharing things with other people about your spouse. I think that's huge as well.
That's an important thing. But I think like rooted behind all of that, or maybe the most important in our day and age, is around this whole area of sexuality. And I think you're right. Like, I think you make a lot of good points. And I think, not that we've been perfect. We've shared our story many times of the journey we've been growing in.
But you're a really good example.
But I do think from early on in marriage, like before we got married, we made some decisions around how we're going to live and the type of honesty that we're going to commit to, that, hey, nothing's off limits in our marriage, and the kind of expectations that I am going to live with, that you're going to expect from me around what does honesty mean? Like, is honesty, hey, I had an affair? Or is honesty, hey, like, I walked past that magazine and I just want you to know it grabbed my attention and I bounced my thoughts. But like, how honest are you?
Right, because if you're not honest with those small things, that's going to lead you down the path. Oh, how did I even get here? Well, it's because you guys didn't have a safety. You didn't create the atmosphere of safety within your marriage to talk about those small things. That's not shamed. But then you find yourself doing something. I never thought I'd be here. I never thought I'd be having an affair. Well, were you having flirtatious situations with somebody at work and you didn't share with your wife and you knew you should? Like, I just think that small things build trust. And small things, I'd rather break trust in small things and build trust in small things than break trust in something that you can't move forward from.
100%. And the damage done from one moment of a big break of trust. These moments happen in minutes, maybe hours, but the rebuild takes years. And we've walked with couples through that are navigating and getting through it. Like, that there's hope on the other side of broken trust, and there's hope on the other side of an affair, and
God can do anything.
There's restoration on the other side of, man, I didn't realize my husband was addicted to pornography, or I didn't realize he was lying about our savings account or our finance, or you name it. Like, there's actually hope on the other side of that. But I think you can do yourself a lot of favors by working in advance on it and being like super intense around it. I think that's one of the things we and you have talked about quite a bit, that I would encourage any husband around, is your intensity level around your purity, around you living the way that you know is healthy for you and your marriage, needs to go up 10 meters.
And I think that the wife would respond that if your intensity level isn't up, it's saying to me, I can't trust you.
Like, it's especially saying to me, if there's a history of issues.
It's saying to me, you're not fighting for me. But I think that it's like when the intensity level goes up, and when, like, hey, maybe I'm having more secure boundaries from my life than what's normal. What that says is, hey, you're fighting for me. I can trust you here. I'm secure here.
No, and maybe just to put clarity to this, like, good examples for us is, like, I never will ever watch any TV show or movie with nudity in it. Period. Like, there was a big trend of Game of Thrones. And like, I'll never watch ever in my entire life one episode of Game of Thrones. It's not happening, except we found like an edited clean version, which wasn't good.
We tried to do like an angel vid version. was actually hilarious.
It
We're
wasn't
like,
good.
okay, no.
But the point is this, like
Yeah.
so what do? Like when we
Yeah.
sit down to watch a movie or show, we look up the parents' guide. We want to know what's in this movie. I'm not going to put myself, why? Is it seeing one time a naked woman in a movie, is that going to spoil our marriage?
No.
But it's seeds now of images in my head and heart that honestly, I don't trust myself with.
And people are
I'm
like,
not putting
well, is
myself
that
in that
prude?
position.
No, I don't think that's prude, because I think it's actually protecting the intimacy that we share,
That's right, the joy,
which isn't prude,
the
right?
joy
But
that
it's
we
like,
share.
it's not prude that I don't want to see naked women. I want to see my wife, not this person.
Yeah. No, and there was a season, like we've lived in overseas in Australia, and we lived near the beaches, and there was a season when we would have conversations going to and from the beach.
Yeah.
Because the beach can be a dangerous place for wandering eyes. Like it's open conversations. There was a season where my phone, the only thing my cell phone could do for a season was make calls and send texts. Why? Was it I'm actively struggling with something? No.
Yeah.
It was decisions of health and trust to say there's nothing more important in my life.
Totally.
Instagram is not more important.
Yeah.
Having whatever access to whatever is not more important.
Totally.
Every device I have, computer, phone, all the things that I have, all have covenant eyes on them. That's a website application that gives you a safeguard around protecting you from stumbling into things that you don't want to, and gives you accountability. Are all those happening because we're actively dealing with issues? No.
But
they're predetermined decisions to avoid it altogether.
We're not dealing with issues because of the steps of safety and boundaries we've taken. And I think sometimes what I've seen is people like they're not willing to let their pride down, to take steps to give boundaries in their lives, and it leads them down the path of foolishness, right? Because none of us are as strong as we think we are, and none of us will deal with temptation how we often think we will in the moment. And so I just think, but like from a wife's perspective, you being willing to do whatever it takes to give me trust and to give to prioritize us in our marriage is the most respectable thing that you could ever do. Men are like, I want my wife to respect me. Well, then do what it takes to live a life worthy of respect.
Right.
I respect you because I know you'll do whatever it takes to make me feel safe and loved and prioritized and to build trust. So you have my ultimate respect in that area because you're not afraid. You don't care what your buddies think or what other people think. It's like, no, I'm doing this because I'm safeguarding my marriage because we're in ministry and we have people on the other side of our marriage and our decisions. And I want to put my wife first. So I just think, like, for husbands listening today, if you want your wife's respect, I think you need to show that you'll do whatever it takes to make her feel trust and safe. And I think she'll give you that respect naturally. It doesn't need to be forced when you show that you're willing to do that.
100%. And I know this isn't for everybody.
No.
Like, I don't want every husband to think they're in the same category, but I do think there's husbands that go, hey, this is for you.
Right.
And this is right up your alley. And some of you, I mean, many in our church are already making such amazing decisions around living with character, integrity, purity. But I think there's something to it, and I think it's a thing in our day and age, unlike any other in history. Where I think we've got to be all about living God's way. And that can be hard, but it's also the best thing. And so I think it's a good one. What a wife wants her husband to know. I think more than anything, I think the items we touched on today are there's funny ones, there's deep ones. I think more than anything, it's this desire to get to know your spouse deeply and to understand them. And I remember years ago, I think it was when me and you did premarital counseling, but the people who did it with us, they encouraged us around this idea that is stuck with us forever, but that by the end of my life, I want to get a PhD in my spouse. I want to be the person on this planet who knows Alexa Jones better, deeper, more intimately than anyone. When you're dating, you're like in grade school. You think you're
like
know some things.
Actually,
you're in preschool. Like, 2 plus 2.
I know everything about you.
Like, she's
I know you better than you know yourself.
And whatever. But then you get married and you realize, wow, I never knew that person. And then in your progression of marriage, you're kind of progressing through the education of your spouse. But getting a PhD in your spouse, it doesn't happen by accident.
No.
It doesn't happen because you live in the same home for 30 years.
Process.
It happens because you go after it. You seek it. You get to know that individual. You do some research. You ask good questions. You keep showing up when things are hard and not easy. You ask for forgiveness and you seek and pursue the one God's put you with. And so I think my encouragement to everybody in our church community, anybody listening today, go get a PhD in nothing else but your spouse.
I love that.
I think they'll help you build a happy, healthy marriage that lasts.
I think my final encouragement would be to the wives, to the husbands, the marriages in our church, to never be afraid to love your spouse more, then you feel like maybe they love you.
Yeah.
Like let's not settle for 50-50 marriages like, hey, well, I'm just gonna, if you do this, then I'll do that. Or if he shows me this, then I'll show him that. You know, you show me yours, I'll show you mine. Like, it's like, let's not settle for those types of marriages. Like, I want a marriage where I feel secure that I am just going to give you everything. Like, I'm going to give you all my love and all my affection. And if there's seasons where I feel like I'm carrying that, then that's great, because I know then maybe that will flip if I'm going through something. But I think it's like, I want to be the first to forgive. I want to be the first to mend. I want to love you more than anybody else. And I think that love unexpressed is such a bummer. Because we're not promised forever. We're not promised like years and years and years together. So like, don't let your love and your marriage go unexpressed. Don't let your spouse feel like you don't appreciate them, even if you're like, no, I so appreciate you. And they're like, well, you never say it. Like, I'd encourage you, like, if you see something, say something to your spouse. Tell them thank you for doing anything that they do. Tell them you love them. Tell them you think they're amazing and they're hot and they're beautiful. Like don't let your love go unexpressed, because what we have is a gift. And like, if I didn't have you, I like, you're everything to me. And I think that we have to remind ourselves sometimes, you know, I think we see like, when we see friends go through something difficult, or maybe you see a friend go through divorce, or you see a friend lose their spouse, and you're like, oh my gosh, you're everything to me. And you're like reminded of the brevity of life and the gift of marriage and the friendship we have. I think, what if we lived that way though, with our spouse, no matter what?
Love it.
With our families, with our kids. Like, I just want to be the first to show you how much I love you.
I love it.
I don't want love to go unexpressed. I think we could all take something from that today.
So good. Love it. I love you.
I love you.
You're awesome. Hey, we love you. Thanks for joining us. So glad you
we love.
joined us on the cutting room floor today. Prayed, encouraged, and blessed you wherever you're at. And I look forward to seeing you next time, right back here on the Cutting Room Floor podcast. God bless you guys.